about the short delay. We had a few technical issues, and hopefully it'll be good to go from now on. Fingers crossed, won't have any more technical stuff. So first off, welcome to this, the fourth in this series of quick seminars on rider education. So this evening, we've got a seminar based around building your cycling CV. So at the Academy, we decided to kind of, this would be a good seminar going forward when we first had applications. And we noticed that we had very few, if any, riders had attached to their kind of application for interest as a cycling Palmares or CV, attached kind of their rider portfolio. So we thought maybe it's because people don't have them. So we thought we'd try and collect some information together, collect some people together, and put together a seminar on it. So we are lucky enough this evening to have, first off, with us Paul Lamb, team manager of Swift Carbon Pro Cycling team. Paul on the left here. Paul's had a long career as a DS in the UK, managing various teams in various incarnations, racing in the UK and also abroad. So I'll just hand over to Paul just to give a quick introduction to himself.
Yeah, hi guys. Well, I don't really need an introduction to myself. How many people have we got in? I can only see four guys at the moment. Alex, is that right?
I think in total we've got 15 on the call.
Right. Okay. But I can't see them all, and they're not all visible. Is that right?
Yeah. Not everyone has their video on. I think when people speak, they come up onto the first one. So yeah, you probably just see me and you at the minute.
Yeah. So I think my relevance and my input tonight, if anybody wants to throw a lot of questions at me, is based on the fact that I get literally hundreds of CVs and applications from riders in the course of a season. You'll be surprised. I think I probably had 200 this year, and obviously I've got to whittle that down to 12 or so riders for a UCI team. And when I say 12, it won't actually be 12 available places because I'll probably be carrying over 7-8 riders from the previous year. So it's quite tough, and as we go through the chat this evening, there's certain things that will attract me to you as a rider, but there's probably things as well that'll put me off. And obviously, as I get hundreds and hundreds, the more and more that come in, I look at them, and if they don't stand out or if they're poor quality, then I'm more likely to kind of disregard them really. So I think having a decent CV to start with and a decent format for a CV is a good starting point. Obviously, the contents of that CV will vary greatly depending on your experience and your results and all the rest of it. But obviously, there's certain things that you really should get right. Otherwise, I'd probably either not even look at it in detail or just kind of file it away really.
Okay. Yeah, cheers for that, Paul. And we'll be going through with Paul later, just talking that in a bit more depth. So secondly, as you can see on the screen, we've got with us tonight as well Harrison Wood. Harrison, who rides currently for SEG Racing Academy, one of the world's leading under-23 teams. Currently out in Greece on a training camp. I actually lived myself with Harrison for a year when we were racing in France, down in the south of Aix. So yeah, know each other quite well. So yeah, if you just want to give yourself a quick introduction, Harrison, to everyone here. I know some of you probably know Harrison already.
Yeah, good evening, guys. Nice to see some juniors as well that are hungry for progressing in the sport, which is nice to see. And hopefully tonight through Alex, also Paul and me, we can give you some advice and guidance as to how to develop a good CV and hopefully then get you all onto the cycling ladder and on their way up to hopefully like teams like SEG and Swift and stuff like that, basically going forwards. But if you have any questions whilst we're going, and just ask me, but also afterwards on social media, just send me a message if you want or anything like that. Any questions, I'm happy to help. So hopefully you guys will enjoy it.
Great. Cheers, Harrison. So just quickly, briefly run through how we're going to do this evening. It's going to run a pretty similar format to the last couple of sessions we've done. So hopefully, based also on you guys engaging and asking plenty of questions. We do have a little bit different to the last couple of sessions at the start tonight. So Harrison's been very kind to lend us his CV, which he sent off to SCG when he applied for them. I think now nearly been 2 years ago now. So we'll go through that. We'll talk to him about the process, about contacting teams, how that was, then what happened and the process of actually then becoming a rider for SCG. And we'll also talk to Paul at that point about and give his input, what he thinks good about this Palmares, what he think could be improved. And then also give from his point of view and his experience, what's good when a rider contacts him, and what's not so great. So as we go along, feel free to post any questions in the chat, and feel free to just butt in at any point and ask any questions. We are just recording this evening session and popping it on YouTube like we have been the last one. So anything you don't particularly feel free to, you don't want going on YouTube, just let us know. We can cut it out. So cheers. So the first bit. So can everyone see this all right on their screens? Is it all good? Yeah, seeing my screen share. All right, great. So yeah, as I said, Harrison's been kind enough to lend his Palmares that he sent off. So this is his Palmares from 2019. It would have been now when he was riding for AFC on France in the south of France, and then he went on to join SCG Racing the year afterwards. So as we can see on here, we've got quite a nice structure. At the top, we've got what some teams I know class is very important. Some teams don't class as important. We've got his training data. So in terms of his numbers, we've got how much he's ridden, which I know in France actually they were quite keen, especially for younger riders. They put quite a big focus on how many kilometres a year that person's actually riding, to see if they in future they'll be able to develop, or whether they might reach a plateau because they're not going to be able to train it any harder. So yeah, Harrison, I don't know if you want to kind of maybe talk through a little bit more about your CV and how you came about this.
Yeah, I can. Yeah, can everybody hear me or not? Am I gone?
Yeah,
Am
no,
I still here?
yeah.
My Wi-Fi's. Oh, sorry, my Wi-Fi's not good. So yeah, like Alex said, I'd put the training data in there. I think it's quite good to have. It's not the sort of the main focus, but I think it's, as all of you guys will know, it's becoming a bit more of a focus now within cycling and within a younger generation. So I think that's definitely a good thing to have in there. And then, like Alex also said, the kilometres, it's good to be able to see for team managers, I think, that you can still develop. And as a, 2018, I haven't done already full-time training or whatever sort of thing, But yeah, then I just also put in sort of like a bit of self on the left. So you've got the profile, some height and weight, sort of the type of rider I'd class myself as. And I think this all just helps to give like the DS or whoever's reading it, a bit of an overview as to who you are before they've even had the chance to meet you, sort of thing, And then with the references as well, which I think are a really, really important thing, I think, going forward, actually, because it's nice that a team could contact your old team. I don't know if that's something that Paul thinks is quite good, but it's quite handy for a DS to be able to ask an old DS maybe, or if they know of them or something about a rider, really.
Yeah, I think on that point, just on that specific point, Harrison, I think that's really interesting because when you normally apply for a job, you automatically have to submit references, and you always get those references. But a lot of riders tend to send references from the coaches or the coaching company that they work for, which is fantastic. That's great. It's a useful small little piece of the jigsaw. But obviously those guys are going to be quite not as impartial, let's just say, because they most coaches want to get their riders on good teams, don't they? Generally speaking. So So that's not necessarily the most impartial way of going about it. So yeah, if you can get a reference from a former team manager, now it's not that in itself is, as you might know, Harrison. I don't know whether some riders fall out with teams, don't they? They fall out with teams, and let's be honest here.
Yeah,
they might not have the best relationship with that team. So sometimes it's not easy getting a reference from the previous team manager, particularly, I've had riders coming from various teams, and I've been unable to get a reference because they haven't wanted to give it. So that's not always a sign of a red flag. It can be, but also some riders just fall out with teams, and that's one of the reasons that they leave. Yeah. What I will say about references as well, because I get so many, quite often it's a good idea if you put in your cover letter to your CV. Don't put this in your CV, because what you've got up there, Harrison, is a nice, neat, visually concise CV that I can look at and I can overview it really quickly. Is to say, I'm happy for my former team manager or coach or whatever to get in touch with you, rather than me have to contact a lot of team managers and coaches. So if they can, as well as a reference, if they can send me, what do they call it? Not a reference. Like a character reference or whatever from the coach, to accompany the CV, or attach it. That's always quite a good idea. It saves me a lot of time anyway.
Yeah, definitely. And then, going on from there, I've obviously just got my the social network sort of platforms, which I think are increasingly more important now within cycling. We're seeing a big shift to social networks, with like the YouTube channels and everybody on Instagram and stuff like that. So I think it's good to include those handles if you have got them available. I think it's also nice for a manager just to be able to look on something, and it's also, you see a bit with some riders that they aren't the most popular on social media and they've been banned from social media and done silly things. So it's nice for a manager to be able to look and see that you haven't posted anything that you shouldn't as well, which would definitely help.
I think also,
and then obviously with the
I was going to say, Harrison, I think it's really interesting on your CV as well that you've got kind of like the racing power insight, because as much as some people sometimes overlook, training data in terms of what you can do for 20 minutes, because it can be so common that so many riders can do 20-minute power really good fresh, but most of the time actually it depends what you can do after 3 hours of racing. So if you can back your results up, this is one thing I'm just kind of seeing from it, is that if you can back your results up, which are on the second page, with the power data, what you did when you did that performance, that surely, I can imagine, for a manager must be something that's really assures them. I don't know if you would kind of agree with that, Paul.
Yeah, 100%. I think for me, this is the key thing, really. Like I say, I get sent tens of emails with these, what are they called? Peak power charts, I would describe them as, aren't they? 5 seconds, 5 seconds, 20 seconds, a minute, 5 minutes, 20 minutes. They're the usual timescales, aren't they? And some of the numbers that I get are just out of this world, staggering, really. And initially, when you get them, you go, "Oh, fantastic! Look at this guy. This guy's going to be an absolute world beater." But then you translate it and correlate it with the results, and if the two don't tally, so riders got fantastic set of training data, but there's no absolute results to back it up. That's a bit of a red flag for me. So I've learnt with that first chart on there, which is the kind of peak power stuff, I've learned really not to take much notice of it. And you'll know, Alex, as well, won't you, that some of the best riders that we've known, that data there wouldn't be very impressive, but they can ride a bike and they've got tons of racecraft and all the rest of it. So I would say, don't overinflate that, or don't use that as. I mean, this is a really good example that Harrison's got, because he also backs it up with some power files from racing, or power files from end of a 4-hour ride or a 3-hour ride or whatever. So it's a bit more realistic and in the real world kind of data, really. Whereas a lot of the peak power stuff, you know, you can do a bit of a warm up, jump on your Wahoo, and you can put out some really good numbers, can't you, over those timescales. But it's going to sound really a bit callous, really, but I skim through it. And I go on to the next thing, which is, you know, relative power files, really, and then onto race results and your kind of Palmares. They're the two things I look at. So whilst it's a good indicator of potential, without a shadow of a doubt, you know, if you've got great race results, and then I can go back and look at these power files, and if they're accurate and go, wow, they're great, then that's another piece of the jigsaw that for me would be quite important. But on their own, and I would say 90% of people send me that chart on the top left, but don't back it up with any other power files or any other power data, and expect it to impress a team manager. And in isolation, it doesn't really.
Yeah, that's really interesting, actually, because, yeah, I mean, I think that's also what you just have to watch a World Tour race, and actually at the start, most of the riders are probably have similar numbers, but it's actually the guys that can do it after 5 or 6 hours, which are the ones that win the race.
Yeah, exactly. But also in a race context, if you're looking at a road race, which is the kind of racing that we're kind of involved in, in real world racing, you don't, you know, we're not really interested in those numbers. We're only interested in those numbers at key parts of a race, aren't we? So either a finish of a race, or a 20-minute, you know, effort for a breakaway kind of thing. So, like I say, as to, I mean, I know guys who would record quite poor numbers in those columns, but have had great results and know how to race a bike, and are economical as well throughout the race. So, you know, those numbers are good for key parts of the race, but when you go deep into a long race, it's you know, it's how close, what percentage of those numbers you can do, because there's no way you're going to be able to do those numbers at the end of a 4-hour race. So you've got to bear that in mind.
Yeah. Just on that then, Harrison, when you sent the CV off to SCG, kind of in terms of numbers, what then kind of happened with SCG after that first contact? Did you go to Holland and do a test with them, or what was kind of their protocol? Just thinking, with SCG definitely been one of kind of the real world leading under 23 teams, just to give the guys an insight.
Yeah, so like I obviously had a bit of contact with them then, and then they put me in contact with like the team trainer then at the time, basically, and he sent a like a power testing then that they wanted me to do, which was like a specific protocol, which was like I can't remember it now exactly, but it was like 3-minute effort, a 9-minute, a 12-minute, a 1 minute, and then like a 20-minute, but all in one ride. So you would do different ones in, like, start one really hard and then see how long you could hold it for, and it basically put then the results into like a software, which then they could see, and they could see sort of your potential, or what you were good at, basically, then, which is what then the team did. And then they then came back to me and said, you know, yeah, your numbers are good, sort of thing, and then they'd like to go, you know, further, sort of thing. But that was one thing that I noticed, was that, yeah, especially with SEG, was that the power numbers were also then tested. You know, it wasn't just like I could say I could do 5 minutes at 420 or whatever. They actually wanted to be able to see that I could do that in an actual file that they could look on Training Peaks. You know.
Yeah. Oh, that's really
because.
And would you say that? Oh, come to you after. Would you say that did that differ from when you went to France? Like I know for me it definitely did. When you came to Aix for the first year under 23, was that process different, or was that a bit similar?
Yeah, I think definitely different. I think the French are more focused on your race results and a bit more like what you are as a person, and if you're willing to make the move to France, to live there and everything. So for me, I gave them my numbers, but I don't think they were too fussed about them really. I think that was more focused on your results and what you were like as a person, which is obviously worth bearing in mind when you're making a CV. Is what team are you actually applying for? If it's a French team, then it's more focused on your results. You need to include more about what you are like as a person and what you've done in the past, And even if you've studied French at school, it's a good sort of thing to have. Whereas I think if you're then applying for, SEG, who are really focused on, not really focused, but are more focused then on the numbers, then it's good to include the power numbers. And likewise with Paul, it's more important for him to have the race results. So then you've got to really find a balance of which one works well for different teams, basically.
Yeah, that's interesting. Thanks for that. Did you have something to add, sorry, Paul?
I don't know, I kind of lost the thread there. I was just going to chip in on something that Harrison said, and I can't remember that. Yeah. Do you want to say all that again, Harrison? Then I can.
Yeah, I'll start again. I think it was about the numbers with the testing with SEG, wasn't it?
Oh yeah. So a lot of guys, I mean, that's really interesting because that is asking you to do all those numbers. Did they actually do all those numbers out on the road or on a static trainer or what?
Yeah, out on the road. So I think then they could also then process them. I had to do them on roughly, like they'd say, I'll choose a hill that was maybe 5 or 6%.
Yeah.
And then I think then that way they could also then test them in their software to make sure the numbers weren't being exaggerated from a power meter, which was quite interesting as well. It was almost validated. Yeah.
It's real world numbers, isn't it? Whereas a lot of guys who obviously, if and I understand why they do it because it looks impressive. So if you on your training peaks power files and stuff, it automatically tells you and gives you your best 5 second, your best 10 second, 30 second, 20 minutes or whatever, doesn't it? If you've done a lot of riding, and the riders will pick the top numbers of all those, in historical riding. So it's a bit skewed, and certainly it's not all done in one session.
That is really interesting to say they're actually have that, because I suppose also like the amount of riders that they've had that have then gone on to be onto world tour teams or professional teams, they can kind of put together a formula, like you say, as to what rider might kind of fit the mold for what. I remember it was very less sophisticated than that, but I remember when I did the first power test for Lotto under 23 when I rode there in Belgium for a year, and after the pre-season test, I just got an email from the very Belgium guy that had done the test saying, you need 6 watts per kilo for 10 minutes, and then you are good. And that was it, really. So a bit less sophisticated method, but that's certainly something they do look at. But yeah.
Harrison, can I just step in a second, Alex?
Yeah.
Did you have you done any VO2 max testing with Sega at all? Do they put any stall on VO2 max testing in a lab?
We did them. We had them done last week. Actually, I had mine done in Holland, like a VO2 max test on the static turbo with all then like a medical test, with the ECG and that sort of stuff. So we had that done last week, and also then last year when I joined the team, we had the medical and also like a lab test, where they take your blood and that sort of stuff to see your lactate thresholds and all that sort of stuff. So it was quite scientific,
I suppose it's building a picture, isn't it? So you've got all these bits of the jigsaw and putting it all together. Let's suppose like you went in and did all this lab tests and stuff. You had a great VO2 max, really high VO2 max, great numbers out on the road and on the peak numbers and stuff. But then if they looked at your results and saw nothing, they'd wonder why, wouldn't they? And I think without one without the other doesn't really work, does it? And I get coming on to that, if you don't mind, Alex, I'll just
no, of course,
a bit more of the time. I get guys writing to me literally, and it's interesting because every CV is very different, and the approaches from riders are very, very different. So I get CVs from guys with no results. They've maybe just got into cycling, they've come from a triathlon background, and they give me all this phenomenal data, high VO2 max, good numbers, good 20-minute power, all the rest of it. And they want me to take them on the back of a ton of potential. So, you know, I think I've got all these numbers and I'm great and I can put out this on a 20-minute time trial. I think I'm going to be really good. And they may be, you know, they may turn into the next Richard Port or whoever. But for me, I'm looking for 5 or 6 riders a year max. For me, that's just, you know, it's just not gonna get them anywhere. But it's not really relevant to what you guys want. But it just goes to show some of the, you know, the different styles and stuff that I get. And yeah, it is interesting. You'll be amazed at the type of approaches I get, and guys who actually truly believe that they're going to make it. And it's really hard to turn these people down, because, you know, it's their dream and they really believe it, and it might be true. But there's only certain criteria that I have to work on. And sometimes you miss out. You know, you get guys approaching you with like masses of potential but no results, and you turn them down, and next year they win in big races. So
I guess it was kind of going over from a session we did a couple of weeks ago. I remember, Paul, when you say about that, like, so you've turned a rider down, but that rider kind of, have you have any examples where that rider then keeps in contact with you, and that's a really good way of impressing your team manager going forwards?
Yeah, definitely. I think a lot of guys do respond. A lot of guys, not many guys are too upset about rejection, really. I'm quite surprised at that, because they're quite kind of realistic. So, you know, I'll get a guy coming to me and say, look, I've won a, you know, and again, this comes back to being realistic and understanding the requirements of a UCI team, I suppose. I'll get guys saying, look, I've won a couple of third cat races. I've done really well. I think I can go further. I think your team can really bring me on and take me to the next level. And I'll say, yeah, well, I'll tell you what, you know, go away, prove to me that, you know, you can put your money where your mouth is. Go and win a couple of Nat Bs. Get a good result, you know, a top 20 or whatever in a national A, and then we'll talk at the end of the year. And I do get that quite a bit, Alex, to be honest. I get guys coming back to me, yeah, without a doubt, which is good, because it shows that guys are persistent. It's not just you know, not just a flash in the pan kind of approach. They actually you know, they're actually showing commitment, aren't they?
Yeah, that is quite interesting, because it shows, like, as much as somewhere like in the UK, I know, like, the pathway of riders progressing is sometimes like questionable, but it actually still is there. You know, essentially, you just need wins on the Palmares, and actually, it's pretty accessible to get in contact with team managers. Whereas in France and Belgium, you know, you've got thousands and thousands of riders. So no, that's definitely.
And people slip through the net, don't they? You know, it's particularly in this country. I can't speak for you. You know, you guys have got a better idea of what goes on the continent, in France and in Holland, Harrison, and whatnot. But you know, in this country right now, there's some huge gaps in the pathway. There's less UCI teams than there used to be. Yes, there are quite a lot of elite teams, I suppose, that kind of fills the middle ground. But below that, you know, it's really tough. I think there's so many riders that need support, and the kind of support that we can offer, and just not enough teams.
Yeah,
I suppose that's a different topic, and you've discussed that elsewhere.
Yeah, we might do. Yeah. So anything more to add, kind of from your experience of maybe difference between French teams and going to SEG, or anything else you would have added to this Palmares, Harrison, if you're doing it again, or anything that might be different now on your Palmares now you would SEG?
Yeah, that's a good question. Actually, I think it's one thing that you could be quite good to include is in hindsight is like a little bit about yourself. Actually, I didn't include it in this one, but I think that's one thing to bear in mind is like what you're like as a person, what your aims are. Basically, it was something that I had in the email that I actually sent, but not actually in the CV. Which sometimes if you send it to a DS, they might not actually see the email part. They might just click on the CV just because they get so many of them. So it's worth thinking about adding, like what your dreams are, what your aspirations are from that team as well, sort of thing. Which obviously then when I went into contact with the team, it was easy to explain. But in that first initial part, they could have just glossed over it and not actually seen that. So it's something to think about as well, for sure.
Yeah.
I actually, sorry guys to jump in, but I actually spend quite a bit of time reading the introduction. I think the introduction is important because it's your first contact. Obviously, what a lot of guys do is they have a brief introduction in an email and then attach the CV. Then you've got to obviously open the CV, which is no big deal. But you can tell a lot from the introduction. Some introductions, like I've mentioned already, are just really unrealistic, and I get guys approaching me who've got no real experience or no real understanding of what riding on a UCI team entails, really. So I think what I want to see, I want to see approaches from guys who understand, understand the what it entails to be on a UCI team, and not think, I've ridden on a club team and I've got a few good results, and now therefore I think I'd be really good for your team. I could do this, that, or the other. So I think being realistic is important. And if you're not ready, don't apply. Don't apply to a UCI team if you haven't really got. It's a bit of self-awareness, isn't it? If you haven't really got the results or you haven't got the experience, you just don't want to end up looking a bit silly, really.
Yeah. And then actually, Harrison, like following on from that, now thanks for that, Liverpool. Now with Seg, is stuff managed differently with Seg being a rider agency? How's that kind of world been managed? With agents, and do you kind of have good contact with them?
So like obviously the SEG team is also then related to the agency. So each of the riders have their own agent within the agency now, who are in charge of managing what you do basically next. And I still speak with Bart from the team quite a bit, not a huge amount, because at the moment there isn't anything really to discuss. But I know from like the guys that have ridden in the team and then gone pro, it's like a team will come to the agency, or the agency will put you out there as a rider with what they think is, with the results or whatever. But I think when it sort of gets from stepping up to that world tour level, it becomes, or pro Conti level, it becomes very much focused just on rider and DS communication, not really with the CVs being sent off or anything. It becomes a bit more personal, really.
Yeah. I know it's probably a whole another hour conversation itself, Paul, but you've got any good bad experience with agents, riders, coming to you?
I do get sent riders, definitely, and I think it's. I do take note when I get an application from an agent, because a lot of agents, generally speaking, agents don't. Well, there's several categories actually. Sometimes agents are just like, their riders are bugging them to get them a ride. So obviously, all agents want their riders to get on a team. But I've got some good contacts, and generally the riders that I get referred to me from various agents are decent lads. So one or two agents that send me stuff, I hold in a bit more esteem than others, put it that way. But I've got two or three that send me riders that I've taken on board, that are on the team now. Yeah. The other good one as well, I think, and I've taken on 3 or 4 riders from this team, is Zappi. You know, Flavio runs a really good. You didn't ride for them, Harrison, did you?
Did a few races with them as a junior, actually. Yeah, in Italy, I did. A couple of guest rides, actually.
Yeah. So obviously, you know, it's a bit time limited. Is riders' times in Italy, so they tend to go for 1 or 2 years and then come back and then need, you know, particularly if they're approaching 2022, they need a UCI ride. And yeah, there's just certain guys I trust, and Flavio's one of the guys that, you know, he can be honest with me and I can say to him, look, what do you think? You know, is he going to cut it at Conti level? Has he got potential and all the rest of it? And he's pretty good, and I do trust him. And we've got 2 or 3 riders on the team now from I don't want to say they're our feeder team, but I'm sure we'll continue down that road. And out the other end as well, you know, I want riders who, you know, you need a nucleus of riders as well to keep the team hungry and ambitious and motivated, who are looking to go to the next level. You know, so if riders approach me and say, look, you know, I'm desperately want a stepping stone or a pathway to get to Pro Tour level, then that's you know, that's really interesting as well, and that you know, perks my ears up.
Okay, cool. Cheers, Paul. So I'm slightly conscious of time, and that Harrison is also an hour ahead and on a training camp, so probably will want to try and get some sleep soonish. So kind of next, just any questions from anyone? Feel free to post them in the chat or on mute your mics, and yeah, fire away if anyone's got anything.
No questions stupid anyway, guys, either. If you want to ask a question, go ahead.
Come on, guys. Have I got any spots left on the team?
Must have something.
Yeah, okay, I've got one then. Then for you, Paul, actually, if you could boil it down to one aspect of a CV which really sets a rider apart, or maybe an example of that, of a rider that's applied to your team, what would that be?
Results.
Okay.
I know that's really harsh, but I got a CV the other day from a rider who's been out in Belgium. He's actually stuck in the UK now, and I think he's under 23, but he's only 19. And in his description, in the intro, in his description, he was telling me how great it was and stuff, which I don't mind. I mean, you know, I think when in your opening introduction, I think it's good to be confident, but obviously not arrogant or whatever. But this was bordering on quite arrogant, this introduction, and I was almost about to throw it away and put it in the bin. And I thought I'll just check his results, and sure enough, his results were pretty impressive and backed up what he was saying. So I looked at his power data, and his power numbers were great as well. And obviously that's somebody that, you know, I'm seriously considering. But at the same time, my next thought ran to, he's a bit cocky, sounds a bit arrogant. Is he going to fit in with a team and all that kind of thing? So there's a lot to bear in mind. And I've got, if anybody wants to email me, I've got a big list of all the kind of criteria that I look for, and I've probably ranked them in order of importance as well. So feel free to email me. If you get the email from Alex, possibly, I can send that on.
Yeah, great. Well, that'd be really good. That's kind of one of the things we want to try and do is just help riders to try and achieve what they want to achieve. So that would really help. So. Anything else from anyone? I know sometimes we just have to get the ball rolling a bit, but no, if not, as Harrison and Paul said, if you have any questions, feel free to forward them their way, and we hope to kind of maybe see Harrison and Paul again on some sessions we might be running in the future. So yeah, thanks very much for coming. The next session we've got is actually been run by BC and UCAD. So the 9th of April, 7 p.m. I think to be confirmed, but I think it's pretty much sure at the minute. Is a UK anti-doping agency session, which I think between us we'd found that if you're not on a BC program, some pretty kind of crucial information as a young athlete can kind of be missed off, and you could find yourself in a bit of a sticky situation. So that'll be a really insightful session. So yeah, thanks very much for joining this evening. See you all guys again soon.
Yeah, good luck, guys.
Paul Harris.